So again, welcome back to the Fusion360 tutorials. This is going to be a little bit more of an advanced tutorial, building off some of the work that we've already done associated with some of the earlier two-dimensional to three-dimensional features. So remember, we're taking these two-dimensional sketches and we're turning them into three-dimensional objects. What we're going to go over today is a feature under Create called Sweep. And if you look at the picture, remember when we hover over with our cursor, normally a box opens up to the right and it kind of gives you a preview. Sometimes it's just words, but and other times it is words with a drawing that kind of like highlights what's going on. There's a big difference between the sweep and the extrude. They almost look identical, right? We are taking a two-dimensional shape and kind of pushing it like the word extrude and turning that into a solid. The difference is, in an extrude, that two-dimensional shape could be a circle, could be a square, could be anything. But when we turn that into a three-dimensional shape, we're only moving it in one direction. We are moving it up or down, in or out. And that path that it travels is a straight line. When we go to do a sweep, the path of the shape, whatever this is, in this case in the preview it's a circle, that path can exist in pretty much any shape we wanted to, with some exceptions. So I'm going to go ahead and teach you how to use the sweep. It's a very useful tool. It's done in a couple different steps, a little bit different than a lot of the other features we've learned, but let's see what happens. So here we go. The big difference for a sweep versus an extrude has to do with the shape that we are trying to make three-dimensional and the path at which it takes. For the extrude feature, all we really cared about was the shape of the extrude, whether it was extrude or an extrude cut. In this case, we do care about the shape that we are going to kind of move and make 3D, but we also care about the path that it's going to take. And I'll try to highlight that as we go. So again, we're going to go over some things a little bit faster because we should be pretty good at it now. Anytime we need a sketch, we want to create a new sketch. My origin is off. I turned it back on. And again, planes right now are kind of irrelevant. I don't have anything else drawn, but eventually they will become relevant. Remember, when I start to sketch, the sketch palette over here on the right-hand side opens up, and that's helpful sometimes. The goal for me today is going to be able to make a coffee mug. It's the classic shape everybody uses with the sweep, and it's not so much the mug that I care about that's going to hold the coffee. It's the handle that I'm going to focus on. So to be kind of quick with how I make my coffee mug, mine's going to be super simple. I'm going to sketch a circle. And that circle's shape is kind of irrelevant, but I'll make it this is going to be a big coffee mug. I like coffee. That's going to be 150 millimeters. I'm going to go ahead and make another circle. This time I'm going to use that offset feature that we learned about a long time ago. And this is going to represent the walls of my coffee mug. The thicker it is, maybe the more heat it holds in, but I don't really care. I'm going to make mine a centimeter, and that would be 10 millimeters. Now remember, this negative sign pops up. That doesn't mean less than 0 distance. It just is a direction. So right now, negative 10 is inside of the circle, whereas positive 10 would be outside of the circle. So I have my closed sketches, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to extrude. I'm not at the sweep yet. The sweep is going to be used to make the handle. Now, for some of you, depending on which videos you've watched, you haven't really seen me do this yet. If you remember, I had 2 circles, and I can see those in my sketches if I turn those sketches on or off. But my sketch actually was made up of 2 circles. So in theory, I could pick the outside circle, the inside circle, or the kind of space in between, and I only highlighted the walls to extrude. So this is a little shortcut, so I don't have to make 2 separate sketches and hollow it out. Just something a little bit different. How tall is my coffee mug going to be? 10 centimeters isn't tall enough. I want this to be a pretty good cup of coffee, so I'll go ahead and make that 150 centimeters. Again, negative versus positive, it's just the direction. I'm a little upside down, but that's okay because in a three-dimensional world, it doesn't really matter. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is start to make my coffee mug, right? I have the inside of my coffee. I have the outside of my coffee. And I know what you're thinking now that you look at it. Hey, where's that coffee going to go? As soon as I pour it into the container, it isn't going to go out the bottom. Wow. And we're 100% correct. This is an example of kind of how CAD modeling, you can end up at the same shape and go 25 different ways. So you know what? I'll end up fixing that in a little bit, and I'll show you how I can go back to those sketches and I can and fix that. So I won't worry about the bottom of my coffee mug just yet. I'm going to worry about the handle. There's a couple different ways that we can do this. But right now, one of the cool features I'm going to do is I'm going to actually introduce something else under the construct feature. If you remember, I talked that we need to have two different sketches. We need to have a sketch that represents the shape that I want to sweep, and then the path that I want that sweep to take place. So the path isn't that hard. It can be in any plane in theory because my coffee mug as it stands now is completely symmetrical. But I want to think about where am I going to place this handle? And I'm going to place this handle actually in between these two walls. So I need a path that represents in between these two walls. And I'm going to use a cool feature called the offset plane feature. Construct. I'm going to offset a plane. Now look, when I hover over the offset plane kind of like icon, I see a description of it. It's going to allow me to make a plane, and that plane is going to be offset a certain distance from an already existing plane. I'm going to show you what I mean. My goal is to draw a circle in here. So for that to occur, I need a plane to exist there. And right now it doesn't. So I'm going to offset my plane from this plane. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drag that. I'm going to move my view cube around and I'm going to zoom in until my plane, there we go, is offset somewhere in the center of this wall, right? So it looks like that this plane is kind of in the middle between these two walls or these boundaries that represents the wall of my coffee mug. So that should be pretty good. It ends up being 70 millimeters. It could be a little bit further in, a little bit further out, but I'm going to hit OK. And I know what you're thinking, like I still don't understand what the point of this is. So I'm going to try to show you. Through the sweep feature, I'm going to create a new sketch and I'm going to draw it on this new plane. Now watch what happens when I select that plane. It's going to orient me, and it's going to look like any other drawing I have. The difference is, even though that represents the origin where my mouse is, you're going to see when I draw my circle that I'm not on that plane. I'm on the plane that I just drew. You're also going to see over here underneath our browser that a kind of new toolbar has popped up, or a new light bulb, if you will, or a folder, excuse me. It says construction. So that's the new plane that I drew. And right now it's off, but if I turn it on, I can kind of see that it pops up right there. So I'm going to be a little bit different here. I'm going to use my ellipse. I want my coffee mug. It's rare that the handle is actually perfectly round. It's normally kind of like ovalish. So I'll show you an ellipse, which is pretty cool. And I'll go ahead and I'll click once. And I'll click again. And you can play with the ellipse feature a little bit here, but that is going to be the shape of my coffee mug. If you if you cut that handle in half on a typical coffee mug, that's probably what it would look like. Now, just to show you, I'm going to go ahead and zoom out here, move around. You can see that that circle is actually on a plane inside of the walls of the coffee mug. And that's going to be really, really helpful. And if I flip on top, I can see these kind of black where this line ends right here and where this line ends right here. That represents the kind of boundaries of where my handle are going to be. So we talked about two different things. We talked about the idea that I need a shape that I want to make three-dimensional. You can think of it like an extrude. I want to be able to pull that oval out. But I don't want it to just come straight out. That's going to be more like a handle, like a handle of a toothbrush, right? Straight as can be. I want this to be able to curve back into the coffee mug. So I almost want to create like a semicircle or maybe an arc or a spline now that you're starting to think a little bit more in terms of CAD modeling, and specifically Fusion360. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw the path it takes. That path is actually going to be perpendicular, however, to this cross section of the mug that I want to make. Now, I was pretty good about drawing close to the origin, and if I look, and I zoom in and out here, I can see that the center of my oval is actually on the origin center line. Those are kind of parallel to one another. So the plane I'm going to choose is going to be the plane that actually bisects the oval that I just drew. So I'm going to stop this sketch. I need two separate sketches, not one, to do a sweep. And this time I'm going to draw on this point. Now, it looks like that sketch disappeared, but it's right here. And if I zoom in, I can actually see the center point of the oval. So I know where I want to begin the path that my handle is going to take place. And I would like it to come exactly down to where it ends. It doesn't have to end perfectly, but it has to end somewhere in this mug. So mine's going to be pretty traditional, this first one. I'm going to go ahead and just make a 3-point arc. You can play with these as well. I'll show you how a 3-point arc works. You click once in the location where you want the arc to start or stop. And then Fusion360 is really good, right? It'll kind of let you know if you're in a location or not. If you look, you see how that dotted line disappeared? When I come down, if I am kind of parallel to that point I started with, it gives you this green construction line as like a reference point. I'm going to go ahead and make that 105 millimeters for now. If I wanted to change that distance, I could, but when I click for the second time, now I have this arc preview. And I can go ahead and make that coffee mug arc go wherever I want. I can make a crazy mug like this, or I can make a pretty normal mug. I click for it a third time, and that line pops up, and there is my arc, which kind of looks like a semicircle. If I want to get specific and I want to make things symmetrical, I can always go back and use my inspect tool. I'm going to click once on the center, and I'm going to click once on the end of this mug, and it's going to tell me that that distance is 25 millimeters. Well, if I want the bottom of my mug to be the same distance, I'm going to check to see if it is from here to here. Whoop, excuse me. I'm going to try that one more time. Close. Inspect from here to here. Oh, for some reason it's giving me this weird angle. So instead of checking the inspect tool, I'll just go ahead and use my sketch dimension. On most people's toolbars, that is one of the shortcuts. If not, it's all the way close to the bottom, sketch dimension. If I want to know what that distance to that distance is, I see it's only 20. So when I click on that in 20, if I want that to be symmetrical, I can always make it 25. The hard part is because the arc is a certain length, it has gone and changed where that location is of the arc. Let me see if it's going to let me pull that down. And it is. So just by kind of grabbing that point and pulling it back down, I now have a starting point and an ending point that is 25 millimeters. Go ahead and stop my sketch. And now I have my arc. The beginning of the arc and the end of the arc are symmetrical from the beginning and end of the mug. And now I have my two sketches. And this is what I want to try to highlight. I have one sketch that I'm kind of hovering my mouse over. That is the cross section of the part that I want to three-dimensionally pull or push. In a perpendicular plane, I have the path that it is going to take. So again, if I zoom in on these, between the path and the shape that I'm going to sweep, those are on perpendicular planes. If I can't pick those planes from the origin, I can go under the construct toolbar and find a way to move some planes around. You saw the offset plane tool being used. So I'm ready to sweep. When I go under create, I'm going to pick sweep. And a toolbar pops up, or menu bar, right? And it asks you for two things, very similar to the revolve, where it asks for a profile. And instead of an axis, this time it asks you for a path. So the profile that I want to pick is that oval that I created. The path that I want to take is this line that I drew. And you're going to see it always gives you a preview. And that preview is going to show you where the shape is going to be. Now, I'm either going to luck out or not here. Let's see what happens. It'll be interesting if it kind of acts a little weird. So let's try that. Let's hit. Good. Something to highlight here. Notice how it's red. Red highlights usually start with a cut. And since I started in the middle of a sketch, Fusion360 thinks that I want to get rid of some material. I don't. I actually want that to be joined. I want it to be part of it. Notice that it's changed color and now it's gray and it's similar. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. You can play with perpendicular versus parallel and see how things change. Parallel looks like it's not a good job there, so let's go back to perpendicular. And when I hit OK, I have, from the side, at least a handle that I could potentially grab onto to drink my cup of coffee. When I zoom in, I see that there's really nothing sticking out, and I'm good to go. I can't drink any coffee though, right? This would be like the worst coffee mug ever. So I could go back in time. Doesn't really matter. I could just start right now. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure all my sketches are on. My toolbar has those sketches turned off, but I'm going to turn them back on. Because right now, top or bottom doesn't matter. And I'm going to go ahead and go back and extrude just that inside circle, one of the first things I drew. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up, and I'm going to make that 20 millimeters. And it's still joined. And when I hit OK, I'm going to see that I now have the bottom of a coffee mug. There we go. So there's my coffee mug, and that's using the sweep feature. I'll reiterate the key points to today's lesson. To do the sweep feature, to make a three-dimensional extrude that doesn't go on a straight path, it goes on usually a curved path, you need two sketches. You need a sketch that represents the shape of the object. In my case, it was an oval. And then you need a sketch that represents the path that is going to take. Those sketches need to be perpendicular to one another. So I have swept a handle for my coffee mug. Thank you.